No one could explain when it truly began, perhaps not even James himself. It was early winter in the quiet village, the kind of morning when the fog moved like breath, low and heavy, hugging rooftops and drifting through the narrow dirt paths. Deep noticed it before anyone else, a stillness in his eyes that didn't belong to him. James had always carried storms within him, storms that moved, raged, thundered, and flashed with a strange kind of life. But now, that storm seemed frozen, locked behind a sheet of ice she could not break. When he stepped through the doorway that morning, he moved as if each step cost him more than he could afford to give. Even little Yi, who usually ran to him with wild, unfiltered joy, stopped midway, her small feet planted on the floorboards as she stared up at him with quiet confusion. Children sense truths adults try to deny. James tried to smile, but the corners of his mouth barely lifted. "Are you tired?" Deep asked gently. He only nodded, removing his coat in mechanical, slow motions. He did not look at her. He did not look at anyone. He sat at the edge of the table, rubbing his thumb against his palm, as if trying to warm hands that would not warm, not even in a room filled with the scent of burning firewood. That night, the cold grew worse. Deep woke several times, each time finding the other side of the bed empty. She would rise quietly and see him standing by the window, the night pressing against the glass like something alive. Sometimes he didn't even hear her approaching. "James, are you okay?" she whispered. The response was always the same, a hollow, distant, "I'm fine." But every time he said it, the words seemed to harden, like bricks laid one after another, building a wall between them. Deep tried everything. She cooked his favorite dishes, she sat beside him in silence. She held his hand when he allowed her to, but now, James flinched at tenderness. It wasn't anger. It wasn't rejection. It wasn't even distance for the sake of hurting her. It was something deeper, something that resembled fear, disguised as coldness. Around the village, whispers began circulating. Has he changed his mind about her? Is something wrong with the company again? He looks like a man who's lost everything. But Deep knew the truth. Whatever haunted James wasn't business. The heaviness in his shoulders wasn't about numbers or contracts. There was a different darkness inside him. Something personal. Something old. And one night, when he returned home with eyes red as though he had been fighting ghosts, Deep felt the truth surface, quiet but unmistakable. James wasn't cold because he stopped loving her. He was cold because something in his past was pulling him away. Slowly, quietly, mercilessly, the truth surfaced slowly, like a bruise forming beneath the skin. After hours of silence, James finally spoke. Not with clarity, nor with strength, but with a trembling that startled her. My father came to see me today. Just 7 words, but they were enough to make Deep's heart tighten. She had only met James's father once, but the coldness in the man's eyes was unforgettable. It was the same coldness James tried so hard to hide. The same coldness that now threatened to swallow him whole. Deep didn't interrupt. She simply rested her hand over his, gently, steadily. He told me I owe him everything, James whispered. Bitterness thickened his voice. The company, the reputation, even my future. He said I'm nothing without him. What did you say? Deep asked softly. What could I say? His voice cracked. He's been repeating the same thing since I was a boy. And then, the story finally came out. The nights his father made him stand outside in the freezing air because he didn't complete his studies perfectly. The times he earned first place and was told it wasn't enough. The years he inherited a company built on foundations of fear, manipulation, and silence. You think I became strong, James said quietly, but I only became numb. Deep felt tears sting the corners of her eyes. She reached for his hand again, but he pulled away. Gently, apologetically. That's what scares me, he whispered. Every time you touch me, I feel how much I want to break down, and I can't. Not now. Not when he's watching everything I do. It finally made sense. His coldness wasn't rejection. It was protection. A desperate attempt to shield her from a man who had never hesitated to use cruelty as a weapon. James moved through the days like a man fighting a battle no one else could see. He threw himself into work, not with the drive of a leader, but with the desperation of someone running from truths too heavy to face. His staff felt the shift, his voice colder, sharper, distant. Even Deep, who tried every day to reach him, was met with a wall so icy it frightened her. But she refused to give up on him. One late evening, she entered his office without knocking. Papers were scattered across the desk. The room was dim except for the blue glow of the computer screen. James sat hunched, unmoving. She placed a cup of warm tea beside him. James, she whispered, you can't keep pretending you're fine. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, a hollow, bitter laugh escaped him. I built my life believing I could outrun the man who raised me, he said. I told myself I would never become him. And now I find out I've been living off the ruins he created. Deep stepped closer. James? You are not your father, he shook his head. No. I'm worse. Because I wasn't brave enough to confront the truth. His voice was barely audible. always wondered why he never showed me warmth. Why he looked at me not like a son, but like a reminder of something he hated. Now I know. I was the proof of his sins. Deep knelt beside him, her eyes level with his. You are allowed to be angry. You are allowed to be hurt. But don't let pain rewrite the man you've become. His breath trembled. Deep. Do you think I deserve happiness? Yes, she said without hesitation. More than anyone. Her certainty shook him more than any truth he had uncovered. Slowly, hesitantly, he leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers. Not a kiss. Not a confession. Just the quiet surrender of a man who had fought alone for far too long. And at last, the ice began to crack. The next morning, James woke with a rare sense of clarity. Deep's presence had not healed him, but it had given him permission to breathe. But fate wasn't ready to let him rest. As he arrived at the office, Tuan rushed toward him. We have a problem, Tuan whispered urgently. A serious one. What happened? Someone leaked the old land case involving your family. It's everywhere. Investors are panicking. The board wants an explanation. James's jaw tightened. That familiar coldness swept through him, not numbness, but the sharp, controlled calm of a man preparing for war. Set up a meeting, he said. I'll speak to them in an hour. In the conference room, investors and advisors waited with stiff expressions. Years of admiration for James vanished instantly when money was threatened. An older shareholder stood up. Is it true your father illegally seized land decades ago? That this company, our investments, were built on that crime? James inhaled slowly. Yes. It's true. Gasps. Shock. Outrage. But he continued, voice steady. I was not aware of it until days ago. And I refuse to let the sins of a past generation destroy the future we've built. Before anyone could respond, the door swung open. Deep stepped inside. Her footsteps echoed in the silent room. Her hands trembled, but her voice did not. Mr. James, she said respectfully, you always taught your team not to abandon the company during difficult times. I believe that should apply to everyone here. The room stiffened. A company's strength, she continued, is not measured by its past, but by how its people stand together when the past tries to break them. Her bravery stunned the room, and James. But outside the building, John watched with a thin, satisfied smile. The storm had only begun.